Good afternoon, everyone. We meet yet again with another installment of the SAARC Talk Series, where we explore the rich diversity and complexity of the shared South Asian culture. And thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. My name is Anurag Acharya, working here at the SAARC Cultural Center. And today, for the fourth SAARC Talk Series session, we have quite an interesting topic and area to discuss, reimagining South Asia through mythology, soft power, and diplomacy as a connecting bridge. And of course, we know South Asia is a region rich of mythologies and mythological epistemologies, and it is interesting to observe and understand how this relates to soft power. To discuss this topic, we have with us today Mr. Anurag Acharya, a political and foreign policy analyst from Nepal. Mr. Acharya, thank you very much for joining with us today to discuss this topic. So let me begin by introducing Anurag Acharya to my audience. Anurag Acharya has over 17 years of professional experience working with Nepali and international organizations on issues related with Nepal and the South Asian region. As a researcher, his primary focus is on Nepali society and its governance. However, he frequently travels across the region, studying and writing about South Asian regionalism and connectivity, exploring themes like infrastructure and soft power. Acharya is also a former journalist who has written extensively for national and international publications. He graduated in development studies from Kathmandu University and completed his master's degree in international relations from Jawaharlal Nehru University, India. Currently, he is affiliated with a Kathmandu based think tank where he has served as a director for over 5 years. As we see, Anurag brings to the conversation important perspectives through his past and ongoing work as a foreign policy analyst, which will help us understand particularly regarding how the soft power perspective of South Asian mythologies. So let me briefly go through the schedule of today's program. First of all, our guest speaker will deliver his lecture, and which will then be followed by a Q&A session where the audience can interact with Anurag regarding the topic of discussion. So now, since reimagining South Asia through mythology is quite a vast area to tackle, I shall not take more time and I would invite Anurag Acharya to take over the session.
Thank you, Dulanaka. Let me just quickly switch on my presentation and we can jump into it together. Let me start by talking about myself. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Before I begin my presentation, I would like to thank SAARC Cultural Center for inviting me to share my thoughts on today's topic. As a South Asian, it gives me an immense pride to talk about our shared civilizational heritage. And as a student of IR and observer of regional geopolitics, I also remain cautiously optimistic in any conversation around regional cooperation. I'm not a cultural historian or an expert on mythology, as I presume many of our today's audience are. Yet I inherit a rich South Asian upbringing that has given me a lived experience and understanding of our shared culture. And these are, I believe, the modest and yet limited scholarly foundation to my today's presentation, where I will discuss in 4 segments, South Asia's shared civilizational heritage, its diverse mythological geography, how mythology is being used as a source of soft power globally, and what South Asia can do or learn from it. And finally, policy pathways for greater regional cooperation through mythology-based soft power diplomacy. So I begin with by acknowledging that South Asia's contemporary realities are at odds with its rich civilizational heritage, where shared myths, religious traditions, festivities, and cultural memories often transcend political boundaries. Folklores, legends, and scholarly exchanges have historically integrated pilgrimage and trade routes, and yet colonial history, geopolitics, and nationalist domestic politics continue to create divisions in what is among the world's oldest civilizational space. But before we move any further in this conversation, it is also important to acknowledge a conceptual distinction between history and mythology. While history seeks reconstruction through evidence and critical inquiry, mythology communicates values, ethics, and worldviews across generations. Myths matter for their role in collective memory and cultural consciousness. Epics, oral traditions, rituals, and festivals, they all transmit our shared identity. As you can see, colonial cartography has transformed a fluid cultural geography of South Asia into rigid political boundaries, where nationalism charged by ethnic and religious consciousness have reshaped exclusive histories and identities, while sacred sites, pilgrimage routes are now divided by borders. And yet, these shared traditions have survived, and cultural linkages have endured and proven quite resilient. Now, moving on to the second part of my presentation, I want to discuss about shared mythological geography of South Asia. One of the most defining characteristics of South Asian civilization is its shared cultural geography, a network of shared landscapes, pilgrimage routes, holy sites, transboundary cultural traditions, and festivities that form a bedrock for this rich mythological fountain. But regardless of the political events that have shaped the region's modern political boundaries, South Asia's mythological geography is organized around narratives, memories, and rituals that have historically connected diverse communities across this region. Rivers, mountains, forests, temples, monasteries, even cities are not mere physical locations, but sacred repositories where mythology, religion, and history intersect. Considering these as regional cultural heritage rather than exclusive national assets offer a better foundation for reimagining South Asia through a cultural lens. Ladies and gentlemen, please allow me to briefly discuss South Asia's major mythological traditions. Again, with a humble submission that I do not claim any formal scholarly expertise on these traditions. So some of the most significant, we begin with one of the oldest and most followed mythological tradition in this region, which is Hinduism. So some of the most significant Hindu mythological and religious sites in South Asia encompass an interconnected geography. As you can see, the Janakpur, Ayodhya, Rameswaram, Sri Lanka corridor exemplifies the transnational heritage of Ramayana. While Janakpur in Nepal is famous as the birthplace of Sita, Ayodhya in India is celebrated as the birthplace of Ram. Whereas Rameswaram in India and Sri Lanka, ancient city of Lanka, have mythological significance due to the war between Lord Rama and Ravan, the king of Lanka. Like Ramayana, Mahabharata also maps the shared cultural geography that transcend modern borders, linking present-day Nepal, India, Pakistan, and Afghanistan through its narratives and sacred landscapes. The epic unfolds around ancient Indian cities such as Hastinapur and Indraprasth, while extending westward into Pakistan and Afghanistan, that was home to Shakuni and his Gandhara kingdom. Many of Nepal's holy sites are traditionally associated with Mahabharata, including the Pandavas' Mahaprasthan, or the final journey into the Himalayas. Together, these holy sites symbolize one of the most enduring narratives in South Asian civilization. and continue to attract millions of pilgrims across South Asia region. Now, similarly, the Buddhist pilgrimage circuit in Lumbini of Nepal, the birthplace of Buddha, with Bodh Gaya, Sarnath, and Kushinagar in India, where Buddha is believed to have attained enlightenment, and preached his sermons, also reflect a sacred geography that predates modern political boundaries. In fact, Gautam Buddha's preachings and expansion of Buddhism to modern day Afghanistan, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Tibet, Bhutan, and other Southeast Asian countries make up for a very rich mythological tradition that has continued to thrive in most of these places. One of the most fascinating mythological accounts in this regard details how Greco-Bactrian king Milinda, also called Menander, who ruled over territories of modern-day Afghanistan and Pakistan between 165 to 130 BC, converted to Buddhism following his engaging conversations with Buddhist monk Bhante Nagasena. Before succeeding to the throne, King Milinda was also believed to have led an attack into Pataliputra, which was the capital of Mauryan Empire, then a thriving center of Buddhism. Milinda's connection with Pataliputra and his later conversation with Nagasena therefore explains how Buddhism thrived in western frontiers of South Asia, with cities like Takshila at its center. The region is also popular in Tibetan Buddhist mythology as the birthplace of Padmasambhava, also known as Guru Rinpoche, who established Vajrayana sect of Buddhism in Tibet. Comparable transboundary landscapes can also be identified in mythological epic Mahabharata, which details existence of Mahajanapad, or the kingdoms or republics, from the southern foothills of Nepal across the Indo-Gangetic plains all the way to western parts of Pakistan and Afghanistan that had shared civilizational exchanges. Now, when we talk about South Asia, we don't just talk about Hinduism and Buddhism, which are, of course, very famous mythological tradition in this region. But there are other shared cultural networks that are also equally important to this South Asia's rich mythological traditions. We can talk about Sufism, where Sufi mythology and the sacred narrative surrounding Sufi saints have long served as a powerful cultural bridge across South Asia. From the 13th century Khanak in Balkh, Afghanistan, the birthplace of Rumi, to the shrines of Khwaja Muhyiddin Chishti in India and Lal Saba's Kalandar in Pakistan, to the spiritual traditions of Shah Jalal in Bangladesh, Sufism is as diverse as the land of South Asia itself is. Despite its small Muslim population, Sufi heritage also extends in Nepal through shared pilgrimage route, local dargahs, and devotional practices shaped by cross-border cultural exchanges. The widespread reverence of Shirdi Sai Baba, the early 19th century saint who is believed to have been a bearer of Sufi-inspired syncretic tradition, has embedded the country through its celebration of compassion, songs, and stories of miracle healing and universal spirituality. Similarly, when we talk about Sikhism, unlike expansive cultural geography of other mythological tradition, Sikh mythology is strongly rooted in the undivided Punjab region. It encompasses rich legend of Guru Nanak and his birthplace of Nankana Sahib, as well as the site of his holy preachings and resting place at Kartarpur, along the river in Pakistan, along the Ravi River in Pakistan. The mythology also paints a glorious picture of the religion's spiritual heart in India, the Golden Temple of Amritsar, and Anandpur Sahib, which is the birthplace of Khalsa, one of the 5 main takhts in Sikhism. The popular myths and traditions within Sikhism are inspired by the life events of 10 gurus and the expansive reign of Sikh Empire, making both modern-day Pakistan and India essential to the faith's heritage. However, through rarest of holy sites, history of Sikhism also lives in Nepali mythological traditions, according to which Guru Nanak had traveled to then ancient Malla kingdom in Kathmandu, where he met and interacted with a Malla king before traveling further into Tibet, interacting with Tibetan Buddhist monks and scholars. This Malla king is said to have suffered from some, domestic and political problems, because of which he traveled to Varanasi, where he initially met Guru Nanak. And after Guru Nanak convinced him to return back to his kingdom, where he promised that all his problems would be resolved, obviously by giving him some solace. That is when the king went back to his kingdom, and then has is said to have met miraculously met Guru Nanak there, who was waiting over there for him. Even today, there is a shrine, which is a celebrated, which celebrates this, famous legend here in Kathmandu. Now, these shared sacred landscapes therefore demonstrate that South Asian mythology has a transboundary and culturally overlapping networks, rather which cannot be studied through fragmented national history. It must also be noted, South Asia's sacred geography and its cultural landscapes have always been dynamic, where myths and legends are adapted to local context while preserving their overarching civilizational significance. Ramayana and Mahabharata, for instance, do not just exist through scriptures, but also through rich folklores and oral traditions. In Maldives, for instance, a famous folklore poem of Don Hilia and Ali Fulfu closely imbibes the spirit of love, sacrifice, bravery, and compassion that is often associated with the teachings of Ramayana. Both Punjabi Sufism and Sikhism transcend narrow communal lines, emphasizing that the divine resides within the human heart rather than external rituals. Sikh artists frequently perform kafis of legendary Sufi Saint Bulleh as they share core mystical values of universal love, human equality that are sacred to Sikh tradition. This plurality illustrates the deeply interconnected nature of South Asian civilizations, and the mythology has historically encouraged cultural coexistence over its uniformity. Now I come to the third section, where I will be discussing mythology as a soft power and regional diplomacy. The end of Cold War in 1990 paved the way for establishing rules-based societies governed by international law and conventions. The resulting world order became increasingly interconnected through flourishing trade and transboundary technological collaborations. This did not mean the end of rivalry among the nation states. Rather, it just meant states no longer relied only on military strength or direct threat to assert their influence. They also began investing in their ability to inspire and shape international perceptions and global value systems, where scholars like Joseph Nye have conceptualized this ability as the soft power, which determines the capacity of states to influence others through culture, values, and institutions rather than coercion and economic inducement. Now, we can talk about few examples from across the world where states have increasingly drawn upon their mythological history and cultural heritage to brand their global image, promote tourism, and expand diplomatic influence. The top among them, of course, we will discuss about Greece, which is perhaps the best example of a country or a civilization which has had a profound impact on the global population through its rich mythological tradition. Now, Greek mythology and deities continue to hold significance in modern times, as they are embedded in our belief systems and body of knowledge, including astronomy, astrology, and literature. I mean, we talk about planetary system, and inevitably we talk about Greek deities. We talk about zodiacs. We talk about legends of Icarus, characters like Icarus and Achilles, and then we remember Greek mythological tales, and then the story of Midas. Which are these are not just mythological heritage. These are also kind of a moral signpost for the world. And this is the beautiful thing about mythology. It's not just stories; they also, act as our, moral signposts. And then similarly, China's Confucius Institute today promotes Chinese language and philosophy, not just as a tool of international engagement, but also as branding their mythological heritage through literary and cinematic characters like the Monkey King and the mystical dragon. Now, dragon festivals in particular have become one of the mainstays of Chinese cultural diplomacy. While the legend of ancient Chinese Shaolin masters and Kung Fu heroes have a distinct place in cinemas and popular culture. Japan also has profoundly benefited from branding its ancient mythological characters, deities, and folklores, which continue to shape global popular culture, both through cinemas and gaming industry. The folklore inspired mythical characters like Pokemon and Naruto are no longer just anime and manga characters. They have become part of Japanese soft power that continues to contribute to domestic export and tourism. Now, these examples demonstrate that mythology can become an important part of cultural diplomacy, which can in turn generate long term soft power and economic benefits for the nation and the region. Given their small economies and lack of military superiority, South Asian countries have traditionally leveraged geopolitical location and contextual significance, mostly through bilateral political negotiations and economic cooperation. And yet, the region possesses an underutilized soft power, which are shared mythological heritage and cultural landscapes. Now, mythological narratives in particular have the potential to contribute significantly towards South Asia's common international branding, as we discussed in cases of other civilizational heritage. Because they weave the cultural landscape in an enchanting fabric of stories and legends that provide both mystical and moral experience. In this regard, mythology can become both a source of regional pride and a platform for international engagement. The potential, however, is not without risk and limits. Mythological narratives frequently become subjects of political contestation, competing historical claims, and religious nationalism. States may seek exclusive ownership of shared traditions, transforming common cultural resources into instruments of geopolitical competition rather than cooperation. The selective appropriation of mythology for domestic political purposes can also divide and alienate societies that share the common heritage. Now, we've seen neighboring societies compete over exclusive claims to mythological heritage in our region as well, where birthplace of Ram, Sita, or Gautam Buddha frequently become subject of debate between neighboring states. Furthermore, cultural diplomacy risks becoming symbolic if it is not accompanied by genuine collaboration and people to people engagement. These limitations underscore the importance of approaching mythology not as a tool of asserting cultural superiority, but as a civilizational inheritance capable of fostering inclusivity and dialogue. Which brings me to the fourth section of today's presentation, where we talk about policy pathways. Now, ultimately, mythology's greatest diplomatic value lies in its ability to cultivate emotional and cultural proximity, where political relations remain fragile. Shared oral traditions, sacred landscapes, and collective memories create a sense of familiarity that conventional diplomacy often struggles to achieve. While mythology cannot resolve geopolitical disputes or replace traditional diplomatic mechanisms, it can generate trust, encourage sustained cultural engagement, and strengthen regional consciousness over the long term. The preceding sections have established that South Asia's mythological heritage offer not only an alternative means of international engagement, but also a foundation for constructing a more connected and cooperative regional order. The challenge, however, lies in translating this civilizational capital into tangible avenue for regional cooperation. This is especially due to institutional arrangements that is needed to achieve this goal, which are still evolving in this region. Now, a potential starting point could be mapping regional mythological landscape conceived as a network of interconnected heritage, routes and corridors, linking destinations and sites associated with shared religious and mythological traditions. Rather than promoting national religious destinations in silos, this initiative would require a collaborative effort by each of the South Asian member states, recognizing national heritage and traditions are components within the shared civilizational and cultural landscape. The recently established SAARC Heritage Forum could be an instrumental in this pursuit. Some additional policy pathways undertaken at various stages by SAARC member states are discussed below. Regional mythological landscape existing effort by South Asian governments already demonstrate the feasibility of expanding transboundary network of holy site through corridors and circuits. The Buddha circuit connecting Lumbini in Nepal with Bodh Gaya Sarnath and Kushinagar in India, extending up to Sri Lanka in south and up to Bangladesh and Myanmar in the east, can make the region even greater hub for global Buddhist community. Similarly, both Ramayana and Mahabharata corridors could be developed as a transboundary heritage routes, integrating holy sites, rituals, and festivities from across the region. Other integrated circuits and routes can also be similarly developed to provide a holistic spiritual experience uninterrupted by political divisions. Complementing the physical and spiritual connectivity, greater collaboration in heritage conservation and branding must also be encouraged. Global heritage promotion and conservation efforts, including those by organizations like UNESCO, recognize that cultural traditions transcend contemporary political boundaries, and so should the efforts to promote and conserve them. In that spirit, South Asian governments should be more proactive in packaging and showcasing their rich mythological traditions, including festivities and heritage sites, thereby reinforcing the idea of common civilizational heritage. Collaborative conservation projects involving archaeological departments, museums, religious institutions, and local communities would help safeguard vulnerable heritage sites. Such initiatives would also shift the discourse from ownership to partnership, encouraging states to perceive common heritage as a collective responsibility. Academic and scholarly collaborations constitute an essential pillar of mythology-based regional diplomacy. Much of South Asia's mythological heritage has been studied through colonial and national historiographies, often reflecting contemporary political boundaries rather than historical interconnectedness. Aligning regional initiatives like SAARC research grants, SAARC art magazine, as well as encouraging joint archaeological excavations, collaborative manuscript preservation projects involving regional academic institutions like South Asian University could facilitate more comprehensive scholarship on shared civilizational traditions. Tourism represents one of the most immediate and tangible avenues through which mythology can contribute to regional development and prosperity. South Asia already possesses significant part of global heritage sites, yet these are frequently promoted as isolated national attractions. Developing these heritage sites as a collective civilizational experience through simplified cross-border travel, multilingual visitor services, and joint promotional campaigns could transform them into sustained source of economic returns. Beyond economic benefits, such initiatives would also foster the region's global image and reputation by enabling international scholars and visitors to understand and experience shared cultural foundations of neighboring societies. Local communities, artisans, hospitality industries, and small enterprises would in turn benefit from long-term business prospects. Investing in shared digital repositories of manuscripts, inscriptions, oral traditions, and historical maps would further democratize access to knowledge and promote collaborative scholarship across national boundaries that can remain relatively insulated from political fluctuations. Digital technologies expand mythology-based diplomacy beyond physical mobility, opening possibilities for government and non-government entities to partner in developing visual museums, virtual museums, multilingual education platforms, podcasts, documentaries, and interactive cultural maps. Such initiatives are particularly important to reach and engage with younger generations, whose platform for interaction and consumption of information is increasingly digital. Collaborative initiatives like SAARC Film Festival could prove instrumental in this regard, which must be complemented by conceptualizing other avenues of showcasing cultural and mythological heritage. Institutionally, these initiatives require stronger integration within existing regional frameworks. Organizations like SAARC, BIMSTEC, and the BIBIN initiatives have largely concentrated on physical connectivity and economic cooperation, while cultural engagement has taken a backseat. The recent efforts by SAARC Cultural Center, however, could prove instrumental in this regard. Such ambitious vision, however, also requires strong technical expertise and financial support from member countries, as well as relevant international institutions dedicated to the cause. Despite these opportunities, it must be reiterated that mythology-based cooperation must be pursued with sensitivity in a region that has frequently experienced not just geopolitical but also interfaith and ethnic tensions. It pains me to say that while I talk about this, a far eastern corner of Nepal is already experiencing, interfaith tensions. Shared cultural narratives are often intertwined with religious beliefs, historical grievances, and competing national identities. Whether it is post-partition Hindu-Muslim tensions in India, Bangladesh, and Pakistan, or Sri Lanka's ethnic Tamil and Buddhist Sinhalese political divisions, or ethnic and communal tensions that have affected Nepal in the recent years. Efforts to institutionalize mythology as a diplomatic resource therefore require careful attention to local and national sensitivities, ensuring local and regional narratives complement rather than confront one another. Promoting shared civilizational heritage should also emphasize historical interconnectedness rather than cultural ownership, and collaborative governance mechanisms should include historians, archaeologists, anthropologists, religious leaders, local communities, and policymakers working towards a common goal. Furthermore, commercialization of sacred sites must also be balanced with conservation priorities to protect the authenticity and integrity of cultural landscapes. Without such safeguards, mythological sites can easily become another arena for political competition rather than a bridge for regional cooperation. Ultimately, reimagining South Asia through mythology requires a shift in regional thinking from viewing shared heritage as a collection of nationally bounded assets to recognizing it as a civilizational resource capable of fostering trust, dialogue, and cooperation among the member states. To sum up, the policy pathways outlined in this presentation demonstrate that mythology is not merely an object of historical or religious interest, but a practical instrument for advancing cultural diplomacy, sustainable tourism, academic collaboration, and regional connectivity. If implemented through inclusive and collaborative institutions, these initiatives could gradually cultivate a stronger sense of South Asian regional identity while complementing existing political and economic framework of cooperation. In doing so, mythology then becomes not only a reflection of the region's past, but also a strategic resource for shaping its collective future. With this, I conclude my presentation. Thank you for your attention, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Anurag. Thank you very much for that very interesting and informative presentation. And the lecture, of course, you covered a lot in terms of policy and the possibilities of using mythologies in promoting diplomacy and cross-cultural connections within South Asia. So I would now open the session into the Q&A segment, and if anyone has questions that you need to put forward to Mr. Anurag Acharya, you can now send them on the chat box, and I will read them so that the guest speaker can answer. So if you have any queries, questions, or comments, now it is your time to put it in the chat box so we can have a deeper discussion. on what was covered during the lecture. So I received one question. Let me read it to you, Anurag. What do you think about the state of education of the history of these shared mythology of the South Asia, particularly regarding the public and children? What could be done to raise more awareness and education regarding these stories?
I think while I was presenting, I towards the later end of my presentation, I said, how when we are talking about shared mythological traditions, we also need to be very considerate about the sensitivities, local sensitivities. So that applies especially to education, because when we talk about education, we are talking about shaping the next generation's mindset, right? So including these mythological traditions, shared civilizational heritage as a part of our education curriculum has already happened across the region. But when we look at the narratives in across different educational curriculum, probably some of them are not consistent with each other. I mean, and I don't mean that they need to be consistent or conform to similar traditions. I mean, there are diverse tradition, and we need to acknowledge that. But while we talk about our own traditions within the national boundaries, we also need to be sensitive towards the transboundary traditions. That is the only way where we are going to impress upon our next generation that we are a part of a common civilizational heritage. If we bring our national or diplomatic differences, transboundary diplomatic differences into our these geographical or cultural geography, then probably it is not going to help the cause of creating that kind of collective civilizational identity. So yes, education is a very important platform through which we need to expand this civilizational identity and interconnectedness. But we also need to be careful how these curriculums are designed, and not allow our narrow domestic politics to infect or affect the minds of the next generation.
Thank you for that answer. The next question is, in your session, you highlighted digital initiatives as a bridge to connect younger generations with traditional culture. Could you share some examples of digital projects happening in Nepal that engage youth in cultural heritage? I think, of course, you covered the children and youth aspect in the previous answer, but particularly in this question, whether you have any response to some examples of digital projects happening in Nepal that engage youth in cultural heritage.
Um, Certainly, I think I'm, like I said, I'm not a scholar of this thing, but as a person who is very interested in our domestic civilizational heritage, I'm very proud to say that a lot of Nepali museum today have preserved these mythological artifact, and the legends of these traditions which emerged from local folklores have now transcended into our popular culture. There are local animations, there are local cinemas, there are local songs that tales about these mythological traditions. We've talked about how Ramayana and Mahabharata are integral part of Nepal's Hindu heritage, but also about Buddhist heritage. And when we talk about Buddhism, Nepal sits in a place where there are different traditions even within Buddhism that coexist in harmony. So different sects have dedicated themselves to preserving their own traditions through these digital archives. If you come to there are in Kathmandu, there are at least three world renowned, UNESCO renowned heritage sites which have preserved ancient manuscript and ancient artifacts which tell the tale of these mythological traditions. And they also have a very nice audio visuals to go with this thing. And sometimes these are also showcased through Nepal's, I think Nepal regularly hosts South Asian film festival. We call it SAARC. So which also showcases some of these digitally preserved heritage.
Thank you. The next question is, you spoke about how mythological diplomacy runs the risk of being entirely symbolic. How could South Asia overcome it and bring it into building deeper harmony?
Like I said, it needs first it needs a very strong institutional framework, which I've already said that it's still very evolving. We've talked about South Asia's SAARC's Heritage Forum, which was just established, I believe, in 2025. So probably, these kind of institutional framework need to develop and then strengthen for this initiative to move forward. Of course, it also requires a lot of resource commitment from member states, and also technological know-how that probably we need to learn from how such kind of civilizational heritage have been protected in other parts of the world, in Europe, in Africa, probably in other parts of the world, and how they have done it and what we can learn from them. Probably that is a good starting point. Of course, there are a lot of better informed people on this that will be able to make informed comments on this.
Thank you, Anurag. The next question is, what are the mechanisms, if any, for an average citizen to correct and address the co-optation, misuse, and misappropriation of our shared mythologies and mythological sites for purposes that are often considered in the purview of enforcement and martial purposes? The defacement of temple structures is well known but rarely discussed or addressed in public realm. Yes, that is the question. Do I need to repeat the question?
No, I think I get the gist of it, and I think I'll begin by saying that in countries where we have a very I don't want to use the word dominant, but a very popular or a very famous religious and mythological traditions, the government themselves are dedicated to protecting it, because obviously the government has a very big stake in it, and the government also is under political pressure from the constituency to work on preserving these heritage sites, temples. Where it becomes very tricky is when we talk about these temples and mythological sites in a in a minority area, where there are side by side exists a very popular or a majority tradition, and we talk about preserving and conserving heritage and traditions of followed by the minority population. That is where I think the governments need to be very, very sensitive. We can talk about Buddhism and rich Buddhism and Hindu traditions in Nepal and India, where they are widely accepted and protected. But elsewhere, in western part of the South Asia, in Afghanistan, in Pakistan, where these exist in very, very small numbers. I mean, like I've talked about, I think in my presentation I talked about how there is a small Sikh community. Yes, I think it's a Sikh community, or there's a small community in Sikh community, I believe, in Pakistan, or which, sorry, not Sikh, Buddhist community in Pakistan, which do not have, they don't have temples, they don't have scriptures, they don't have anything. They just have some folklores and locally published, scriptures, which are all the repository of their ancient traditions. Now that is where the state needs to invest more. That is where the government needs to invest more to protect and conserve these kind of traditions, where which might disappear if the state does not commit itself to it. And probably that is where platform like SAARC cultural center and heritage forum comes into picture, where you can bring together member states to agree on protecting the most vulnerable of these sites, the most vulnerable of these monuments. And like I've talked about, a very small and special, Sikh Gurudwara and shrine that exists in the outskirts of Kathmandu Valley, which I think locals have very proudly protected. But probably, more people need to know about it. Sikhs who travel to Nepal, probably don't know about it because the government probably has not promoted it as often as or as much as it should have. So these are the small things that need to be done.
Certainly, certainly. Then there is a comment from Rajan Nima, where they speak about researching. I'm currently researching the India Foundation topic Kalinga Lanka narrative, sacred geography and civilizational expert. I would and I will. I am reading this to our guest speaker. They are saying we would greatly appreciate your insights, references, suggestions, or any other relevant inputs that could enrich this research. And then they have also repeated, please throw some light on the Kalinga Lanka cultural exchanges. Now, I am not entirely sure whether our guest speaker today might know a lot about the specific aspect of relations, but Anurag, is there anything that you need to add?
Well, I've submitted very humbly that I'm not a very big expert on this. I come from a very a particular lens of international relations through which I'm looking at this thing. Of course, I know about the rich Kalinga civilization which existed in the past, and we've seen and heard about those stories through popular culture, through television series, through movies, and I do know how where they intersect, but I don't think I'm an authority on this and can credibly comment on that.
Of course. And then there is quite a long comment by question and comment by Pragan Nayak. The awareness and sensitivity of cultural mythology across SAARC nations is very critical. How do you think this can be leveraged so our existing and future generations have understanding of the cultural mythology? Also, the role of local groups or like-minded people who can contribute to local folklore, since a lot is not in the mainstream mythology. There are a lot of tribal cultures and ethnicities who have a lot of local mythological stories that should be included and mapped through surveys and research. There should be some forum to contribute and bridge the language barrier so the locals can contribute. Anurag, yes?
Yes, I think this was one of when I was a journalist and covering Nepal's constitution drafting process. I did a lot of traveling around the country. One of the places that I reached in the easternmost part of the country, there were people who were talking about preserving language, and they explained to me why language is so important for them, because Nepal is a very diverse country, and there are a lot of over 125 languages over here, and some are spoken by probably just few hundred of the remaining population, and this language that they were talking about, I was in a part where they were talking about preserving Limbu language, the Kirat language. The reason they said that language is a gateway to civilization, language is a gateway to mythology, language is a gateway to traditions, right? If you cannot preserve language, then you cannot preserve the publications that have been written in that language. If there are no people who understand that language anymore, they won't be able to carry forward that tradition. There will no more be translations, there will be no more the digital archiving of these linguistic traditions. So probably I think the insecurity that the minority traditions and culture face is profound, especially because I think the world has gradually transitioned from a physical means of publication, where the republication was very, very common, and it was very obvious. These days, publication, republication, physical republication, forget republication, even physical publication has become very rare. It's all digital, and what gets prioritized in digital is space is what is already popular, right? So probably these kind of minority culture, minority mythological traditions probably are in danger of falling through the cracks. So that is where I think regional forums, regional institutions need to actually collaborate more among each other.
The next question directly refers to the lecture that you did. In your talk, you mentioned about Sufi shrines in Nepal. Could you share some more information about them?
Um, I think I did not talk about Sufi shrines. I talked about there were dargahs, and also there are a lot of gurdwaras over here. Where saints from these Sufi and Sikh traditions have are believed to have traveled, and that's why they are famous over here. But there are very limited numbers. But the way Nepali society imbibes the spirit of Sufism is probably best through the syncretic tradition that is popular, that was made popular by Siddhi Sai Baba. There are a lot of followers of Siddhi Sai Baba over here, and these followers of Siddhi Sai Baba, or they often gather around what they call temples. They are not a very traditional temples in our sense. They don't have those kind of pagoda style, or they are a very modest looking space. But they have a kind of what they call sarva dharma kind of symbols around, where they celebrate the human side of these religious traditions, rather than the ritualistic side. So they celebrate the message of compassion, love, celebrated by Islam, Sikhism, Hinduism, Buddhism, and they discuss the philosophical side of these traditions. And I think that is how, and a lot of songs. I think there are a lot of songs that, and there are small children that come to these places, where they are being exposed to this kind of multicultural concept of religion. They are not taught religion in a very narrow nationalistic sense. So I think this, I believe, is the most beautiful part of Sufi tradition that Nepal has in a very unique way adopted for itself.
Then there is a comment from Leshi Lendup. If I'm not mistaken, I heard Guru Padmasambhava, the founder of Mahayana or Vajrayana Buddhism, was from Tibet. I
Yes,
doubt it. He was from Swat Valley, Pakistan,
yes, yes,
and later traveled to India, studied under numerous Indian siddhas, uh, subsequently meditated in Nepal, Bhutan, and later Tibet, creating numerous mythological sites connecting India, Pakistan, Nepal, Bhutan, and Tibet. Not a
yes.
question. Yes.
Yes, yes, this is also an interesting fact. Even I did not know before, I was preparing for this presentation. I came to know about this, and I totally agree. And see, this is the best part of talking about South Asia as a rich civilizational heritage and tradition. I think no part of South Asia is untouched from this shared mythological landscape. It's all part. And like if you talk
Maybe
about if we talk about a very famous Bangladeshi Sufi saint Shah Jalal, he was not from Bangladesh. He was also part from the western part of South Asia. Somewhere around Pakistan, Afghanistan. So he traveled all the way, but he made Sylhet, or I can't pronounce that name of that place properly. In that place in Bangladesh, his entire life he dedicated to that place. Same with Gautam Buddha. He was from Kapil Vastu. He was born in Kapil Vastu, but he made India's Bodh Gaya, Sarnath, his Karma Bhumi.
Quite true, quite true. Then, I mean, I think we can go to, okay, we have a question from Sumin Bajracharya. Thank you for the presentation. I would like to ask, and there are two questions here. What the role of a South Asian diasporic community, student coming abroad to pursue higher education like myself, can contribute in cultural diplomacy? The second question is, being from Nepal, coming to study Heritage Studies in Germany, how do you suggest I find job opportunities in our region?
Hmm. I think it's a very good question. I might not have all the answers, but I think as a Nepali, probably Sumin would agree with me that sometimes all Europeans, Americans, or rest of the world knows about Nepal are a Mount Everest, or sometimes the 2015 earthquake and tragedy. I'm like, those are the things that people know. They don't know that Nepal is very much part of South Asia's rich civilizational heritage and tradition. You talk about South Asia, and all they would know about is India and Pakistan. But Nepal, like Sri Lanka, Bhutan, we are all part of this South Asian civilizational heritage. So probably each of us as citizens who travel abroad or who live abroad, a diaspora community, they are ambassador of this region. They are cultural ambassadors of this region. And it is also upon them to take interest in talking about Nepal's civilizational heritage. I think the next generation of diaspora community that are going to come of age, who are still not who have still not come of age, probably they will be on the receiving side. And it is also for them that I think in this region we need to protect and promote our collective civilizational heritage. The Sri Lankan, Pakistani, India, Nepali, Bhutan, Bangladeshi, Maldivian, who have grown lived and grown out of this region in the diaspora, probably they will need to at some point in their life they will come around searching for their roots. Because I know when we travel abroad for a few weeks, sometimes we already miss our home. Probably for these people living in diaspora for many years and sometimes generation, probably that longing to have connection to that heritage and root is even more. Probably we can't understand that. So probably the governments also have a responsibility towards them. Just simply providing them non-residential citizenship or card does not fulfill that responsibility, I believe.
Uh, of course, since we have nearly exceeded our time, maybe we can go to one question. You mentioned during your lecture that mythologies are also moral signposts. Could you elaborate more on this, and how can this contribute to a shared South Asian moralities?
uh, it's a very fantastic question, and thank you for whoever has asked this question. I will respond to this with a very personal experience that I have had. When I was growing up, every Sunday, those days we did not have Nepali channels. We had Indian channels, which we could see in the border region. I come from a border region of Nepal. Every Sunday morning, Mahabharata used to play. Uh, uh, this was when I was 6 or 7 years old. I watched the entire 70, 80 episodes that were there. But I was not satisfied after watching the entire thing, because many of whatever happened did not make sense. And I kept asking questions about those things, because it was very interesting, and it was something that I had never seen before, as a child. So I kept asking about this thing, and I still remember something that my dad told me about Mahabharata. And this is probably not original quote. He's also heard this from somewhere. He said that Mahabharata is a epic, and there is a saying, popular saying about it, that whatever is in the world is inside Mahabharata, and whatever is inside Mahabharata is in today's world, and it will never become old. which means, you talk about any kind of moral lesson, you will get it from Mahabharata. And even today, when I watch some of the YouTube videos and reels of Gita Upadesh conversation between Arjuna and Krishna, I'm not thinking about rituals. I'm thinking about I'm connecting with the message that Lord Krishna gives to Arjun about karma. Sometimes we as working individuals in modern society, sometimes we get drained out. We run out of our juice. And those kind of moral flavors that we derive from our ancient root kind of revitalizes us. Sometimes that message that you get in very popular Hindi movies, where do they come from? They derive their moral flavors from our ancient roots. That we talk about Midas's touch, a very famous Greek mythological tale. That how do you teach a kid that too much of greed is not good for you? You simply tell him the tale of Midas, and that kid is never going to forget this tale. I have never forgotten. It was one of my most interesting, my favorite tale growing up that I studied in my class. So I think these folklores make for a very, very interesting moral signpost that you can carry on from your childhood until the day you die.
Yes, of course, Anurag. And thank you for that answer. And of course, thank you very much for all the answers and the discussions that you brought forward in response to the questions that were put to us by our audience. And of course, I need to bring to your attention that we have received a lot of messages thanking you for your presentation. For example, Priyan Nayak says, thank you for your insightful session, opened a lot of discussions to carry forward. Ladita Pate has said, thank you for your insightful presentation, and of course, a lot of appreciation for the session that you've done. And of course, on behalf of the SAARC Cultural Center, I thank you for spending your valuable time and discussing this very interesting topic. It is needless to say that a lot more research, not more study has to be done on how mythology, shared mythology of South Asia relates to soft power and diplomacy. So thank you, Anurag. Thanks a lot.
And thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It has been an enriching experience. Thank you.
Thank you. And of course, we will now conclude the fourth session of the SAARC Talk series, and we will meet you once again with another session of the SAARC Talk series, where we'll be exploring various aspects of South Asia's shared culture. Thank you very much.